For cheap gold, items and other boosts for Diablo 4, visit aoeah.com. Check out the link in the description, you get 3% off with the code ARIAT. Hello and welcome everybody. There seems to be some displeasure about Diablo 4 in the YouTube world, and that some things could be better is obvious. But in this video I want to explain why I think Diablo 4 is not as bad as many people say, how there are also clear parallels to the development of Diablo 2, and what I would like to see in the future. Let's begin. First of all, the story and the dark atmosphere are really great. The graphics are very nice, there are many details to discover. The world offers some variety. A good story and beautiful optics alone are not enough to keep a player happy in the long run, but also in the endgame I see some points that give motivations. There is an incredible amount of build possibilities. Diablo 4 has a lot of potential for experimentation. There are many factors working together, skill trees, paragon boards and aspects. Creative players have finally found out things that were not intended by the developers, e.g. combinations that cause a lot of damage, but regular patches adapt the conditions again and again. In addition, PvP in Diablo 4 is also really fun, even if it can take some time to create a solid build and to gain the necessary experience. Those who do well will even be rewarded with loot. Just don't give up when getting slaughtered mercilessly in the beginning. It might feel like you have no chance, but with every match you gain experience, and from time to time you gain more and more knowledge about how to optimize your build. Every build has its weaknesses, even the strong twisting blades rogue, and skillful gameplay is at least as important as a good build and strong equipment. However, each class also has some advantages that can be played out. Barbarian and Rogue are quite easy to play and promise quick success, but Necros or Mages can also come up strong. They are basically less tanky, but can make themselves immune for a short time and have strong CC effects. My Fire Sorceress has surprised me very positively, and I think in Diablo 4 PvP the last word is far from being spoken, and in team fights different combinations have potential. I also like the combat dynamics very much, even though I criticized the few skill buttons available compared to Diablo 2, but now I think it's okay, it just fits into the concept. Combat is often challenging, with most builds you have to do more than just pressing one button. But for people who like such builds, there are also some options. But at the latest in higher dungeons, combat becomes more demanding. Positioning, movement and timing are important there, and also control effects. It can be a great team challenge to run a level 100 dungeon in a group. You really have to play together, and the choice of classes decides the combat strategy. Everyone needs to know his or her role. The team factor is much greater than in Diablo 2. Even though you can only form groups of 4. In the endgame of Diablo 2, 8 people easily run solo split farm in the same game, and even in bail runs it's hardly relevant whether you hit yourself or not. An S-tier build is enough to pull the whole group anyway. At this point we must clearly state, Diablo 2 also was not really finished at the release, and much of what we love it for just came with the time. Days ago, the players could simply forgive more, because they had no other options anyway, and compared to Diablo 1 it was a great improvement. But the really cool stuff like rune words, jewels and so on just came with the expansion. Before Lord of Destruction there were only gems for socketing, and the few unique items that existed in the beginning have been too weak for the endgame. Those uniques played nowadays came with LOD too. Magic Find didn't work for a long time, even though this affix has been on items. The build variety has been very limited. At different patch versions there were different meta builds. The longest time, in so-called Diablo 2 Vanilla, it basically looked like this. Sorceress has to play lightning if she wants to farm everywhere. Cold Sorks were condemned to farm only certain areas. A paladin was either a Hamadin or a smiter. Amazons only had bowies and javison builds, and with the Necro there was Poison Nova and Summoner. For PvP also maybe Bone Spear. Most barbarians played Whirlwind, and there were also Pit Zerkers and Frenzy Barbs, but the class was not too popular for farming, except for Travincal. Assassins mostly played Lightning Trap. Those who wanted to stand out a bit might have had a Kixin for Übertristram or a Rift Assassin. Most druids were Hurricane Tornado builds. For playing Wolf and giving up Teleport, you had to have a real passion. Same for the Bear, who was even more unpopular. Various new build possibilities came in the course of Diablo 2 Resurrected, a reason why this game should not be written off yet too. It still offers a lot of potential and it's a real classic. But now back to Diablo 4. I also see a lot of potential here. If I could wish a few things for the upcoming patches, it would be the following. I think it's a shame that you can fight the story bosses only once. Boss runs are an important part of Diablo games, and the locations in the story are really beautiful. So it's a shame that you only can see them while playing through and then never again. So it should be possible to run Andariel, Duriel and the others as often as you want. That would also create a bit more variety to the dungeons. And where the hell is Diablo? The game is called Diablo 4 and not Lilith 1. What I also miss is the magic find component. Many players have always built MF charts for farming. Sadly, there is currently no such thing. Rune words and sets are still to come at some point. I hope that the balance to aspects and uniques will be okay in the end. You should have different alternatives how to equip your build, without one variant turning out to be the logically strongest. You should be able to set nuances here. Also, I think the trade options are a bit too limited. Almost everything is account bound. More character slots and pages in the chest would not hurt too. But for the first, I'm really happy with Diablo 4 and I still do not feel the motivation hole of which some have told me. In the builds that I play there is still a lot that I want to try out, and then there are also the builds that I still like to test. I was very skeptical about D4 in the beginning and my expectations were accordingly low. Maybe that's why I was surprised that positive. Others maybe overhyped the game first and now seem to be somehow disappointed. I wonder what these people actually expected. How did they imagine the endgame content to be? The argument you do the same thing over and over again sounds a bit absurd to my ears and also doesn't say anything concrete about what exactly is being missed. At the end of the day, repetition is the fundamental principle of every game, regardless of whether it's a racing game or a shooter. In a certain context, you end up doing the same thing over and over again. There are different factors which create variance in games, but a lot always remains the same, especially in Diablo games. I don't understand how people could do thousands of bay runs without batting an eyelid, but in D4 complaining they would do the same thing again and again. Kinda paradox. Of course I would also welcome some additional variety, but that applies to both games. I have already mentioned in several videos that I would like to see new maps in Diablo 2 Resurrected according to the same scheme as it was in the mod. Project Diablo 2. Likewise for Diablo 4, I would like to see the possibility to farm all the bosses from the story. In both cases, the developers have the power to change things. How do you think about it? Feel free to write it in the comments. I say goodbye, take care, and may the loot be with you.
Follow me. Thanks. Goodbye.